Hello and welcome to Reveal the Average Locum Optometrist Rate. Firstly, just while people are joining, I just want to thank everyone for registering for this webinar. It's amazing that we had over 140 people register for a webinar, and it just shows the interest in the whole optometry space. And hopefully you're going to get some really great insights out of this webinar. Like I said, I'll just start with some housekeeping. If you want to contribute in the webinar, just post below some comments. We have a moderator on this webinar live who can respond to those comments via text. But if we don't get to any questions, which we'll try our best to do, given the time constraints, we will get back to you via email. We've set aside about 30 minutes for this webinar. Hopefully we stick within that time. We're going to be quite rigid with time, so we might have to move on. But if there's anything really pertinent and there's any really great debate coming out, we'll try and stick around on it for as much as possible. Just as way of introduction, I'm Stevie McIntyre. I'm the head of marketing here at Locum, and I'm joined by Jeanette Hare.
Hi everyone, I am Jeanette Hare, as Stevie's introduced me, and I am healthcare lead for Locum as well.
Perfect, thank you, Jeanette. Okay, I can see there's enough people have joined. If anyone wants to introduce themselves in the comments, we'd love that, and our moderator can say hi back, and just to show that we're live and we're on here. So why are we doing this webinar is the first question. So we are located at Locum, and our motto is getting the right person in the right place at the right time. We're an award-winning technology company, and we connect temporary healthcare workers with healthcare organisations all across the UK. We have been around now for around 6 years, and in that time, we've built up 10,000 plus healthcare organisations who use our platform. This is all the way down from one branch organisations right up to large multiples. So there's a huge array and different types of clients that we service. We've posted over 1.8 million shifts now on the platform. This bullet point is ever changing, as I'm sure you're aware. And we have over 30,000 plus healthcare workers using the Located Locum platform, which makes us the largest locum platform in the UK. We're also really proud to say, that's not on this slide, but we're really proud to say that we have the highest rated app on the App Store and on Google Play Store. And we're really proud of getting client feedback. So post-webinar, we might ask you for feedback about this webinar, and we would love just any feedback. It helps us improve and innovate as we go forward. So hopefully that's a whistle-stop tour of Located Locum, and you get a good understanding of who we are and why we're doing this webinar, and especially why we're placed well to do this webinar. We have access to healthcare workers, and we have access to healthcare organisations. So we feel we're deeply embedded in healthcare, and we have a lot of experience in this space. So what are we going to cover tonight? You may have seen by the title, Locum Rate Revealed, the average locum rate revealed. So what we've done is we have completed a survey with locum optometrists who use the Located Locum platform, and we've asked them what their rate expectations are. We then dive into factors that impact rates, and then we look at understanding what locums want. So that's allowing you as an optical organisation to understand the people that you are trying to get filling your shifts. We then take you through a couple of case study examples, and then we'll draw a conclusion of the event. So yeah, any questions on that, pop into the chat. I can see there's a couple of quick comments already, so that's fantastic, and hopefully you're getting the answers you need from our moderator. So let's just set the scene in optometry. So there's currently across the whole healthcare space, there is supply issues. We've seen it recently on national news in terms of the nursing issues, in terms of the care issues. We know in pharmacy, there's pharmacist supply issues. And I suppose optometry, being a healthcare industry, is no different. There's a workforce focus, I suppose, in healthcare at the moment. It's about getting better pay and better benefits for healthcare workers. And we, by studying our data, have an insight into the UK workforce supply and demand economics. Like we mentioned at the start, we have healthcare workers from all across the country, from Inverness all the way down to Plymouth. We have healthcare workers. So it kind of gives us an insight into the supply and demand economics, like where there's a lot of healthcare workers and where there's a lot of demand, and likewise where there's sparse population of healthcare workers, but there's lots of demand, and then something's got to give in terms of rate or the movement of healthcare workers. So I suppose what we want to do is provide better patient outcomes through our platform, less staff shortages, and a better experience for permanent staff, temporary staff, and also the people who use the service in healthcare. And that could be patients or people who walk into the branches across the UK. So hopefully that kind of sets the scene for this webinar. And now we're going to jump into our survey and the methodology around our survey. So what we did was at the start of 2023, so just at the start of January there, we surveyed our Locum database who are signed up to the Located Locum platform. There's around 800 people who responded to the survey. And we asked them a variety of questions just to get a real understanding of who they are, what they want, and what life's like as a locum optometrist. And what we wanted to do is compile a report and put it out in the webinar to just make sure that organizations understand locums and to sort of present the idea that, understanding locums is the key to running a successful organization, and understanding staff in general, I suppose, understanding what makes your organization fantastic and what you could improve on. So one of the key questions, and I know it's probably a big talking point here on this webinar, is we asked what would the minimum daily rate you would accept as a locum optometrist be? And I thought it was really interesting. There was a wide variance of responses, and we'll get into why there was a wide variance of responses very soon. But what came out is the highest rate that was said was £500 a day. The lowest rate was £270, and the average rate that a locum optometrist would expect as of today in the UK is £333 and 18p. You can see there really immediately there's a huge spread and a variance of rate. Jen, do you want to comment on anything that you feel like impacts that variance?
Yeah, so just looking at that, I was going to ask the question of for when are these emergency shifts, for instance? So do they expect this if they're asked on a Sunday, for instance, to work? Or is this the average minimum daily rate in advance? Is this a month now kind of thing? So be interesting to kind of find that out. And also even regions as well, does that differentiate between cities to rural areas and so forth? It'd be good to kind of get that information as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We asked an open-ended question here: what is the minimum daily rate you would accept as a locum? But this doesn't really take into account all the factors that impact rate. For example, how soon is shift posted, the location that Jen says. So essentially, this is just the very minimum that a locum would accept. And I think the variance here, from looking at the data myself in terms of what came back from the survey, was the variance here comes from location mainly. People understand where they are and what they can expect to earn. They talk to their peers, they see what's out there on marketplaces, and they see what's offered from shift coordinators or on job boards and things. And then I suppose it comes down to just simple economical regions like cost of living in an area, which is really interesting. So what we've done as well is we've analysed that data, and it pulls at what something Jen just mentioned is we've then broken that down by some regions in the UK just to show that there is a variance in terms of what a locum expects or would work for of the minimum rate by region. So what you can see here is London is £353.46, West Midlands 358.33, Northwest 316.66, Scotland 299.16, and Northern Ireland is the lowest of them all at 287.50. And that's this has come from the locum. It's very important to say this has come from the locum optometrist. So, Jen, is this fairly typical in the industry, or is there any variances that you see, or across all of healthcare even?
Yeah, I think across all of healthcare, there's definitely variances here. We tend to find that Scotland is higher rates across the healthcare industry, and London is lower And this kind of feeds into the whole supply and demand. Obviously, if you're in a city, you've got a lot more locums, and therefore the demand is lower. So this is actually really interesting for me.
Yeah.
And Northern Ireland, not so much. It's always lower.
It's really interesting. So to just expand on what Jen was saying there, what we usually see across the healthcare space is in areas that are densely populated, there's more supply of healthcare workers, or optometrists in this case. So essentially, the rate would be slightly lower due to the fact that there's supply matches the demand. But what we're seeing here is potentially, because it's come from a locum point of view, the minimum rate a locum would accept in London maybe falls in line closer to the cost of living in somewhere like London, rather than the supply and demand economics. Jen, I just thought about that live on the spot. It'd be interesting if anyone agrees in the comments. I'd love some affirmation of my thought process there. But it just shows that there are supply and demand economics. Like, look at the difference in Northern Ireland to London. There, so what the point I'm trying to get at here is, as an organisation, you need to know this information. You need to know what a locum expects. If you post a shift at at the Northern Ireland rate in London, you're not going to get locums filling those shifts, because they know that they can command that £350 based in London. So I think this is a really interesting regional variation breakdown. We picked the regions that had the most data in terms of the feedback we got. So it's a nice sample. Obviously, it's not a clean regional breakdown. You don't have Wales in there, for example, and it would be interesting to maybe expand the survey and get more responses and see what we could do there. But I just thought that was really interesting. So hopefully that gives a good flavour of the rates locums expect, or the minimum rates locums expect. And like we said earlier, that's not taking into account emergency shifts or shifts that are posted very close to the shift start date. That really just takes into account what locums would take as a minimum, as a blanket question, which is really interesting. So what we're going to jump into next is we're going to jump into really understanding who locums are, the demographics, the psychographics, their behaviours, what they want from your opticians, how often they book shifts, and what days they book shifts on. So I'm aware this could be quite small on your screen. Hopefully, if you're watching on your phone live, you might struggle to. So I'll make sure I read out all the answers. So the first question we asked, just to get a feel of the breakdown of the locum population, was what is your age? So the average age of a locum, so 45% was 25 to 34, 31% is 35 to 44, 6.8% 18 to 24. Obviously that will be low because you wouldn't be through university at most of those ages. 45 to 54 at 6.8, 55 to 64 6.8, and 65 plus 2.3%. Jen, what are you taking from this?
I think it's realistic in the sense of, I think if we kind of I would group the 25 to 44 together, just with regards to the percentages there. I think they're very close. So I'd look more at that age group as opposed to splitting the 34 to 44. If that makes sense, or 35 to 44, right? But what it does also show is that as the population ages effectively, and there's less usage. So is that to do more with the technology impact, as opposed to that maybe there are still a lot of locums, that are people of that age range locuming, but they're not using our app? Or is it that actually they've made all their money locuming and now they're retired? So it's just interesting to kind of, it would be good to kind of look at the percentage, maybe in a chart or something, to see what is the actual age range and for all, proportion obviously of age ranges too.
Yeah, I think like you hit the nail on the head there when you said that obviously you look at this, so over 76% are between 25 and 44. I suppose there's an argument to make, like that's the core demographic of people that are working in as locums, like that's just the core demographic. one thing I would say is that, we see that 65% of our people who use our platform use the app. Potentially it would appeal more, like app-based technology and using technology would appeal more to that age demographic. Like that is in no way a generalization. I'm aware, like a lot of people, regardless of age, use technology, but that could be something you take it from. I suppose what this sort of says to me is, like, I suppose you need to get thinking about the age range of locums and employees just generally, and what they do, and where people of that age range hang out online. How do you communicate with them? If you know that your direct pool is your locum pool is over 65, you might not use WhatsApp or instant messaging, which is because they might not use that. Maybe traditional forms of email might be better, or for even picking up the phone. So yeah, it's just a really interesting breakdown, and I suppose it starts to sort of paint the picture of the locum demographics. So moving on, the next question we ask, which is really insightful, and I think should give everyone on the webinar a really good picture of behavioural in terms of booking shifts. So it's how far in advance do you book shifts? So 54.5% said 1 month in advance, 45.5% said 1 week in advance, 29.5% said 2 months in advance, 22.7% said 1 day in advance, and then there was 11% who said over 2 months in advance. Jen, what are you taking from this one? What's your main takeaway, and then we can kind of discuss other bits and bobs.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway I would say on this is that locums are either booking 1 month in advance or 1 week in advance, and is that down to those that are really organised career locums that plan their month ahead, or do they work on the basis more of planning a week in advance? This then brings back to when you post your shifts. There are still a high percentage that are even booking 2 months in advance. So if you're posting your shifts further in advance, of those that where you're going to have people off on holiday and things like that, getting those shifts out to them as far in advance as you can will also ensure you're getting that fill rate. Because there is a high percentage they're booking a month in advance. So obviously, the closer you leave it to the time of the shift, you're going to have a smaller pool to obviously pull from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's completely bang on. I just reinforce what you say. So obviously 1 month in advance is probably the sweet spot to post your shift, because we've got the majority of people saying they book 1 month in advance. So if your shift is available when they look, then that's more likely to get booked. I would also pull out here that 22% said they book 1 day in advance. So that 22% potentially are looking for emergency shifts at obviously a better rate because it's an emergency shift. So what I would say is all is not lost if someone phones in sick last minute, or you have a last minute emergency and you need to post it out to a marketplace platform like Located Locum. All is not lost, because you still have 22% of people there who will be on there looking for the shift on Sunday night for the Monday morning. So really, really interesting. Again, you see the spread here. 1 month in advance is the sweet spot, but you can post your shifts and there will be people looking at your shifts, but the minority. So moving on, if you're happy to, Jen.
Yeah.
Again, another really interesting behavioral thing from locums is what time of day would you usually apply for shifts? So 47.7% said late evening, and that's after 7 p.m. 15.9% said early evening from 5 to 7. 13% said from 9 to 12. 11% said from 12 to 3, and another 11% said for late afternoon, which is 3 to 5. Main thing here for me is that 7 p.m. onwards is the huge majority. Jen, any comments on that one?
I think that's actually standard across the healthcare industry. What you do tend to find is that people are working in the day. So obviously they don't have access to their emails, their text messaging, the apps and so forth. And therefore we do suggest, that you're getting the shifts out so that locums can see them in the evening times. There's also a point, and I know this is more in other industries within healthcare, we find that And people will actually look for shifts in the morning between 7 and 8. I know there's not, that time isn't in here. So it may be that you didn't ask for in the survey, or they've just kind of bulked it into the 9 to 12. But we find that that's maybe when people are commuting. So again, it's like phone in hand, scrolling. So yeah, it is outside of the hours, and obviously making sure that you get that information out as close to that time so they're not missing the shifts that are potentially available.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I know we have some locums registered for this webinar. So if this sounds like something that you have any variances, or you want to comment and say, I do actually look when I'm commuting, because I don't think that question was asked, whether it was a commuting. So people have obviously lumped into like after work. So it could be before work, after work idea. So people after they've been working a shift, and they are looking to book their next shift. So if there's any locums, pop in underneath the comments and say, does this sound about right? If it does, that's great. If not, then tell us when you would look. Really interesting thing here is, from this survey, we're now starting to paint a picture of, you know, what the behaviors of a locum optometrist. And again, locums on this, let us know if this behavior sounds right. So you're booking shifts 1 month in advance, but you're booking them at 7 p.m. or beyond. So for employers, get your shifts out to your locums at 7 p.m. a month before this due to begin, and you're in a good place, you know. So that's the kind of like the power of doing something like this and understanding an audience. You start to match your communications with behaviors, and it's not so disjointed in a way. You know, the last thing you want to do is just like completely going against the grain, like posting shifts for the next week and only posting them out during midday, and people getting that communication instantly, and then sort of just skipping on past it because they're busy in another locum shift. So hopefully this has given you some insights and some things to think about in terms of your locum pool and attracting locums generally. So we'll move on. On average, how many locum shifts do you work per week? Again, another really interesting one. It seems to be a pretty even spread here. So what came out on top? So 27% said 2 shifts per week, and 27 again said 3 shifts per week, 25% said 1 shift per week, 22 said 4 shifts per week, and 20.5 said 5 shifts a week. So it's hard, you know, what I'd say here is there's a real spread of locums and what sort of how many shifts they would do. You have locums who are full-time, who are doing 5 shifts a week, and you have locums who work alongside a permanent role, and they're doing 1 or 2 shifts a week. Again, not much to take from this one apart from just, you know, there's a good spread of people.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just thinking that she said there's a good spread. You know, and it maybe kind of feeds into what, you know, who are the locums. If you look at profiles, are they locums who are working part-time, maybe have a young family? Are they locums that are working a full-time job but picking up additional shifts at weekends? Or are what we would call career locums? Are they doing this as their full-time job? You know?
So. Yeah. And I suppose like one takeaway from the employer side is that, you know, if you have 5 days in a block, your permanent optometrist has a week off work and they're going to Spain on holiday in the summer, you could get a locum who will do 5 days in your store, so you don't have to have multiple locums coming in and out. So that's one positive. You know, you've got a good spread there. But we'll move on from that one. This one I feel is very, very strong. Are you willing to travel outside your radius? So 70% of people who we surveyed said yes. So how we define the radius is within 20 miles of their home. So people are willing to travel outside of 20-mile radius, which is actually quite a big area. So takeaway here from me is that, you know, often people think they've maximized the locums within their area, but, you know, look outside your area. Like that's again the kind of supply and demand economics. You know, you might live in a area that is not densely populated, but there could be a close by city which is very well populated with lots of optometrists who could locum in your opticians. But it's just about communicating to them and asking them to travel. Jen, any thoughts on this one? I know you had a great analogy that you shared with me earlier.
Yes, so this is really, really significant, actually. What I find when I'm speaking with clients is, especially from clients who have multi-stores, for instance, and they may be dotted around, you know, you might be 20 miles between each store. And what we find is that each store has their own little black book of locums, and it tends to be that that store uses those locums and they get the shifts filled or whatever. But they tend to not share them. And actually, we find that if you centralize your locum pool, you will find that locums in another store may cover. They like working for the brand, they like working for the company. They're happy to fill shifts that are 20 miles away, 25 miles away. And it also brings back as well to, if we even look at the likes of Northern Ireland, where our rates are lower, you will find that people are willing to travel length and breadth of Northern Ireland. It's not that big. And so again, that's potentially where our supply and demand is. Our rates are lower because the supply and demand is there for the full population.
Yeah. I think as well, like you made a point about little black books and things, and it's about digitizing your records. Having people on file that you can communicate to almost instantly, or using a platform like Locate a Locum where you can communicate instantly of shifts, to people who are outside your usual radius, and then you might find that shifts are filled quicker. So, just really interesting. I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to go leave this one. So next kind of feeds into everything that we've talked about. These are the internal factors that influence rate. So influence that rate, the minimum rate that a locum requests. So firstly, the size of your pool, how many locums do you attract? And like what we're trying to get at with these questions in the survey is, understanding locums is key to attracting more, which is key to, setting accurate rates within your organization. How you manage leave is the second one. We talked about locums like to book shifts 1 month in advance. So if you manage leave within your optician where you say you have to give 1 month's notice, at least then you'll know that you can post shifts of vacancies 1 month in advance. And then that should help fit in with not only the locum's behaviour, but also should help to avoid, big emergency rates or being in a stressful position where you're not sure if someone's going to be able to fill a shift, which is almost worse. No one likes that to have that hanging over them. Understanding the speed of how quickly a shift is sent is kind of the same thing. But understanding just rates by region. So having access to data to understand what is the market rate sweet spot. And by market rate sweet spot, we're not talking about lowering the rate. We're talking about putting a rate out that attracts locum optometrists. So if you put the rate too low, no one will go. You've seen what the minimum rate people expect is, so no one will apply for that shift. You put it out too high, you could be paying a lot more than you need to in terms of the market rate sweet spot. So it's all about knowing that rate sweet spot and having access to that data and understanding that data and actioning it. So just a quick scenario, and this is just a fictitious scenario to kind of give you an idea of how using data kind of could help an organization. So an organization has difficulty attracting optometrists, leading to increased pressure on staff and reduced revenue related to test time. So that's just a made-up scenario. So if they analyze their data, how could they counteract this scenario? They could look at locum heat maps, so kind of see where the supply and demand are. So this would give a real quick glance, could give a picture of, if I do communicate 20 miles outside the radius, there's a lot of supply of locums, so I could fill the shift easier. Looking at regular locums who are inactive in other branches that are part of your, say, chain. Say you have 6 branches and you have a branch in Birmingham, one in Wolverhampton, but the Birmingham branch is short of a locum, but the Wolverhampton branch has inactive locums who would often fill shifts but aren't working. Digitizing the system and looking at the data there could help you communicate with them. And then also just again understanding the market rate. So posting at the market rate sweet spot to attract locums. And then the outcome of this is simple, increased revenue, increased permanent staff satisfaction, increased customer satisfaction as well. So resources, again, flying through this. I'm like those rockets on the emojis, going very, very quick. Hopefully you can keep up with what I'm saying. And if not, we're going to share this recording anyway. So you can watch it back as many times as you like, but once might be enough. So essentially, we have a number of resources. We have the full locum study where we ask the locums and the breakdown of that in terms of the locum responses and the breakdown. We have that to share. In the next coming weeks, we're going to be a locum attraction strategy, which has helped us sign up 30,000 plus locums. We're going to share that with you. And we also, on our platform live, we have a live market rate report. And this allows you to post at market rate sweet spot and understand the rates by region. So all those things will be available, apart from the market rate report, which is live on our SaaS platform. But if you want to get any more information on that, chat to Jen or drop us a comment underneath, and we will get back to you to organise a demo. And then just to conclude, we're just gone on to 30 minutes there. Just to conclude, we are in the most candidate-driven market with temporary vacancies of all time. So, you know, the urge to do flexible work and the gig economy is ever expanding. You know, people want flexibility, they want to manage their own time. So just to be aware of that, and that's why understanding this set of workers is so important. It's not just important for the employer, it's also important for the worker, because their needs should be met, and that's how you satisfy them, you know. And the other point is workforce data is beneficial to drive better business decisions, as well as that, you know, the UK has workforce supply and demand economics. And overall, the point we want to get across is, you know, using data for good, you know, can help within optometry. Qualitative data and quantitative data. Qualitative in terms of surveys like this and understand the workforce, but quantitative in terms of data around rates. So by using these, it can only have a positive impact on the industry and on the workforce, for both temporary and permanent. So with that, Jen, I'm sorry again we didn't get to the questions and just ran out of time. There was so much to cover, but the moderator's done a good job of chatting to you guys in the comments, I can see. So if there's anything we haven't answered, please do reach out or post underneath, and we will chat through the answers via text. But that's us for this evening. I just want to say a massive thank you for joining us. It's great to have so many people live on the webinar, and hopefully if you're watching on demand, thank you as well. We do appreciate everyone tuning in. And Jen, do you want to sum up?
Yes, thank you. I hope you got some insightful ideas there, and we've helped you in some way just to kind of rethink about how you can get those shifts filled. And as Stevie said earlier, you know, if there is any queries around the market rate report, feel free to reach out to me and happily have a chat with you. But yes, thanks and good evening, everyone.
Perfect. Cheers. Good evening, guys. Have a good one. Thank you again for joining. Bye.